You ever feel like you're chasing success, but that you're losing track of your life in the process? What if I told you that you could have both without burning out? My first guest today has been discovering some wonderful things and has been doing some incredible things when it comes to helping women in leadership specifically. And my second guest has also been transforming women's lives with her incredible menopause method. I'll have all of this and more coming up for you on the Business Breakout. Yeah, welcome. So when it comes to burnout and pushing and working in those industries that would potentially cause us to want to do things in a male-dominated way, we can tend to, as women, feel like we've got to push in a way that is the norm. But I'm here to tell you that it doesn't have to be that way, because we women, we work a little bit differently, don't we? But before we get into all that, I want to let you know that, hey, if this is your first time here with me, I am Ella Glasgow, your host and the Director of Funability at Beyond Virtual Events, where I help establish small businesses create impactful virtual experiences that keep their audiences engaged from start to finish. And this just so happens to be the unconventional virtual event that I produce live inside of Zoom on the first and third Wednesday of every month. And this is my personal invitation to you to join us in Zoom for the next one, so you can see what's possible for your online events. And depending on where you're watching from, whether it be LinkedIn, Facebook, YouTube, the link to register will be in the description or the comments or right here on the screen. So I know that I said that we're talking about today unconventional means when it comes to women and the way that we operate in the world, because we have to move a little bit differently than the men folk. Am I right? Give me a am I, you know I'm right in the comments, okay? Because the way that they're trying to move is not necessarily the way that we need to move. And my first guest today uh, really has discovered this about breaking free from that constant hustle and really understanding how to help women in leadership to move in different ways than they may have been taught or seen in the male dominated places that they're working in. So if you would please welcome to the stage my first guest, Jen Coken. Welcome to the stage.
Thank you so much for having me here, Ella. It's a pleasure to be here.
It is so great to have you here with me today. I have been looking forward to this moment to really be able to have you on the stage and talk with you about these things that you're doing. You've worked with over 10,000 leaders.
It just makes me old, man. That's like, that just means, yeah, I just turned, yeah, it's true. Because I've been coaching since 1997 and had my own company since 2016, where I've specialized specifically in women leaders, and particularly in with women leaders in male dominated industries. But yeah, 10,000 people, from high school students to members of Congress and
Wow.
everybody in between.
Wow. So I wasn't going to tell people that you were old. I didn't feel, I mean, you started obviously when you were 12. So
I did. It's true.
well, I imagine that in all of that time that you've been working with these people and with the, you have a massive amount of case study. So, what is the most common thread that you see amongst the women that you work with that just comes up again and again that we just seem to not be able to get over when we're women in leadership?
It's funny, physician heal thyself, right? So the most common thread is the same thing I found in myself. I was spending so much time trying to figure out how to fit in and navigate the hallways. I didn't see a lot of other women leaders like myself, and I was honestly exhausted. And I would boil it down into one thing, which is we don't necessarily know who we are because we've spent our whole lives going for the corporate goal, if that's been what we've been striving to do, or raising our families, or being the sister or the caretaker of our families, that we often forget to figure out who we are because we've been so busy trying to meet expectations of others. And those expectations aren't even real. That's the kicker. So again and again, it's like, wait a minute, I count. Wait a minute, what do I want? And it's really working with these women to just take a step back and go, who am I as a leader? What does authenticity mean for me? Because if you Google how to be an authentic leader, which is a huge word people are throwing around these days, you get 166 million hits in 4.1 seconds. And what that tells me is people are spending far too much time looking outside of themselves rather than looking from within. And that's what I help my clients do, is look within and really ask themselves the hard question of, how do I want to show up as a leader? How do I want to be known? What's the legacy I want to lead? I've got to come first.
Wow. How many hits did you say for that?
166 million.
That is insane. And it's so true that we often look outside of ourselves to try and find our identity. And as women, when we're looking outside of ourselves, there's, to be fair and to be honest, there's not as many uh, examples in the public eye to make it easy for us to mold ourselves. It's changing. It's
Yes.
changing. But
Yes.
in the past, it hasn't been really easy. I can see in the room, Corrine is telling us here in the room, she said, we give so much to others and not a whole lot to ourselves. So when when you're talking about that, I know that you have often talked about those hidden costs of constantly trying to prove ourselves and be somebody else. How do you see that play out, especially
Oof.
for women in leadership positions? I know it's
Well, oh my gosh, so a couple of things about that. Number one, while we have seen strides in the executive suite, we've seen more and more women who are now CEOs of companies. I think it's now upwards of 29%. Here's the kicker about that, based on a recent McKinsey study: the majority of those women were found on outside searches, which means we're not building a pipeline within companies. So we've really got to work with the emerging leaders, whatever label you want to stick on people, the ones that are super smart, like you and everybody else on this show and everybody else that's watching, that want to go for stuff. And we've got to be really clear that it just doesn't come from within, but we've got to create corporate cultures that nurture women's leadership. I think part of it is too coming out of an industrialized society, coming out of a society where it was very authoritarian and top down. Women have never been that way. We are the nurturers, we are the interdependents, we are the caretakers. And so, how do we tap into that authentic vulnerability, that authentic nurturing, while still holding the line? I call it being a velvet sledgehammer. Can you deliver the idea, the feedback direct, but with love? And one of the biggest impacts, and this is just something I saw this morning that blew my mind, Ella, was actually a guest on Marie Forleo's podcast or vlogcast, saying that women who are unmarried live longer than women who are married,
wow.
because those women pour literally their years into their spouses. Not bad or wrong, it's a choice, but they're not taking care of themselves. And that is a huge issue for the women that I work with. We call it work-life balance, but it's not just a traditional household. There can be non-traditional households, but how
Right.
do I put myself first? It's exactly what Corrine said. How do I put myself first? We're always pouring into others.
Yeah, that's so true. There's so much. So as much as this conversation is so deep, so fast, which is what I love about this show. And I want to make sure that we respect everybody's time. And I'm just going to have you come back on another time. So, one of the
I'd be
last
happy to.
questions, right? One of the last questions I want to ask you right now, because this is not the end of you being here, but For someone watching right now, for a woman watching right now who is starting to recognize these patterns that you're talking about in themselves, what is that first practical step that they can take today to start shifting their mindset and doing that at their own pace?
Yeah, well, I'm going to give you two. The immediate one is sit in stillness. We do not give ourselves enough time to stare out the window and just think and be, because we're rushing around so much. So sit in stillness, listen to your heart, connect to source, whatever you want to call it, and ask yourself, who am I? What's important to me? The long-term one, I have a new book coming out in March, and they can buy my book because it's called Make Imposter Syndrome Your Superpower, the ultimate guide for women in STEM to lead with more authority, influence, and impact. That'll be out in March. And that I designed that to get to as many people as possible, to give people a roadmap of what to do.
Ah, thank you. Thank you. I just wrote my note here. Sit in stillness. Sit in stillness. Thank you so much for giving us those things and for letting us know where we can get your book that's coming out. Oh, I'm so excited about it. And for what, if you're wanting to find out where to get that, you can go to Jen's website, which all of that information is going to be in the credits when we roll those credits at the end today. And I saw that Kareen had also commented as well. Relax, recoup, and rejuvenate, which are important things for us to do. So let's keep this train rolling, this transformation train rolling, shall we? My next guest has a powerful story of personal transformation that is really going to hit home for a lot of you women. Jennifer Gilliland has been through the ringer, self-doubt, unhealthy habits, you name it, she's been to it. But she didn't just stop there. She found a way to turn all of that around. And using her menopause breakthrough method, she has helped countless of women reclaim their health both physically and emotionally and feel truly aligned with who they are. And let me tell you, Jennifer's approach is not about quick fixes, it's about lasting transformations. And as somebody who is standing on the precipice of the door of menopause, this is definitely of interest to me. Please welcome to the Business Breakout, Jennifer Gilliland. Hey, Jennifer. How are you
Hello, thank you
doing?
so much for
You're
having
so
me.
welcome. You're so welcome. I'm so glad to be able to meet you today and really learn about everything that you're doing because this topic is so important. As someone
Mhm.
who is the ripe old age of 40 something, I know most people looking at me are like, Ella, you are lying. I know because I don't talk about my age very much. I don't care about it, but she's older than she appears, y'all. So your personal story really is one that's incredible, and especially when it comes to breaking free from the patterns of self doubt and those unhealthy habits. So, what was the turning point for you when you realized that something had to change?
That's a very it's a very loaded question, right? I think the point in time where I realized that health was so much more than the food on the plate or even how many reps you're doing at the gym. There's just so much more to it. There's so much introspection. There's so much kind of focus on our heart and our spiritual life, our mental health, our emotional health, and how is that playing out in the choices that we're making or not making when it comes to how we're prioritizing our own health and our own fitness and wellness and that type of a thing. And I just made a decision one day that if I was going to be there for the rest of my, family and friends and be able to partake in life the way that I want to have the quality of life that I wanted to have, then I needed to prioritize my own health and wellness and take a step back and really look at what was working and what wasn't working. And that all has to start with, what kind of food am I putting in my body and how am I moving my body through the day? And I really try and help people get to a place where we're not looking for perfection. We're looking for 1% better. What can we do 1% better today? And it doesn't really matter what anybody tells you as far as, macros and protein and all that kind of stuff. It's how can I make my body feel the best each and every day, and keep continuing to work on that.
Yeah, yeah, I hear that, and I see that Jen is saying here in the room. This is something that we used to talk about. We used to talk about,
Hmm.
and it has become something that has become taboo for whatever crazy reason that we feel like we have to keep these things under wraps. So you developed the menopause breakthrough method to help women really
Hmm.
reclaim their physical and emotional well-being. Sorry. So
Exactly.
what is the one misconception that you often see women struggling with when they start this journey? Because like I said, as somebody that is standing at the door, I am acutely aware of what's they've told me is coming. So
Hmm.
what is that
Hmm.
misconception that you feel that we don't talk about very much and needs to be debunked?
Yeah, well, to your point, I mean, perimenopause can start 7 to 10 years before menopause actually hits. And we talk a lot about menopause. We don't talk about what happens, a decade potentially before that. So women can start to notice changes. They might notice that, they're feeling a little bit more tired. They have a little bit of brain fog. They're not feeling as energetic. Food is, tasting different, or they have different food cravings. All of those kind of things can sort of creep up. I think the misconception is that it's as easy as just count your macros, count your calories, and move more. And in the midst of, to Jen's point, all of the busyness, all of the responsibility, all of the expectations on our time, and then you want me to count calories and keep track of, how many reps I'm getting in, like it's impossible, right? It's just, it sets us up for failure to make it look like it's that simple. And that it's not something that we have to embrace as a consistent thought process through the day. It has to be more than just counting calories. And once we can get away from that and kind of stop buying into that piece of it and really look inside about what do I want? I mean, when we develop goals and we develop, a potential for what we want to see change, we have to have a plan. And so if we don't have a plan, we're going to, to me, it's like getting in my car and trying to drive from Ohio to California without GPS. I'm going to end up in Texas. So, we have to have a plan that's specific to our goals and our needs.
Yeah, it's so so true. So when we are getting to that place, and that thing that you're talking about, the perimenopause, I had heard about perimenopause
Hmm.
maybe last year sometime from a friend of mine who has since become uh, a coach talking about perimenopause. And but I didn't start really researching it until this year. And like I said, I'm in my when I say I'm in my 40s, I'm 45. I turned 45 this
Hmm.
year, and to see now doing the research of for myself to find out about perimenopause, because there are so many symptoms that I have for my personal self going on
Yep.
that now I'm beginning to realize are not just one offs, that they're most likely related to perimenopause. And I've probably been in it for a much longer time than I
Mhm.
thought, based
Yep.
on what I've got going on with me. So, for the women that are feeling stuck in some of
Hmm.
these patterns and things that you were talking about, um,
Hmm.
what is one simple action that they can take today? Because I know that you're really big on just be doing something simple to start, and I am big on
Right.
that as well. So, what's one simple action that they could potentially take today to start seeing that shift in where they are?
So women are very smart. We are very intuitive. We know what our bodies need. We simply push against that quite a bit. So I encourage women, similar to what Jen said about slowing down, take 5 minutes and think about what your body actually needs. When you're feeling overwhelmed, you're feeling high stress, you're feeling anxious, what does your body actually need in that moment? Do you need a glass of water? Do you need to take a walk? Do you need to call a friend? Do you just need to sit for a minute and start recognizing those patterns and doing those things? And pretty soon we're giving ourselves the space and the time to actually recognize how we can make ourselves feel better pretty quickly. And once I call it kind of the stair steps, right? When we step on that first step to say, I'm going to rest for 5 minutes, then all of a sudden we have a little bit more energy, a little bit more motivation to do the next thing and the next thing. And we're building that foundation and those building blocks of good health and wellness. And it becomes our story and our journey, a continuation of that story that's going to get us where we want to be.
Yeah. Yeah, I can hear that and understand that, and that hits home for me, and I hope that hits home for you that are watching live or in the replay wherever you happen to be, that that concept of taking just 5 minutes, because so often it is easy for us to tell ourselves that we don't have time in our busy schedules, and 5 minutes can feel like an eternity, because you feel like I don't know if I'm just preaching to myself right now, but sometimes 5 minutes feels like, well, if I take 5 minutes to do this, then I'm going to lose the 5 minutes that I have to do the other things, and there's so much that needs to be done, and this needs to happen, and all this needs to happen. 5 minutes, you will be amazed what can happen in just 5 minutes. And as Jennifer said, you keep building on those 5 minutes. And before you know it, you turn around and see your whole life is changed. So, the both of you, and I thank you again for the both of you being here today, but the both of you are really helping women to break free from those limiting beliefs with everything that we've talked about today, whether it be in their careers or their personal lives. And all of those things are tied together, whether we want to try and break them apart or not, they are tied together. So, from the both of you, I have one final question for you. And if you have a question here in the audience, then definitely make sure that you type those questions in the chat so that we can get those questions asked and answered. And I'll ask you here in the Zoom meeting, this is your opportunity to go ahead and ask that question as well if you want to ask that question. So I'm going to ask you, what is that final piece of advice that you want to give to the women that are watching right now, of really how to let go of the stories that we've told ourselves so that they can step into their true potential? That's a question for the both of you that I'm asking. And Jen, I'm going to start with you to let you give your answer.
Yeah, it's such a great question. And it's something that I have been practicing deeply this year, which is to practice letting go of people pleasing and start advocating for myself. And that is, I have always been the smoother outer, the peacemaker, the people pleasing. The household I grew up with, that is what I thought was feeding my heart until it was clear it was bankrupt. So practice letting go of pleasing others. And as Jennifer said, ask yourself, what would please me right now?
That's huge. That's huge because, like you said, the people pleasing thing, especially with women, is massive. It's absolutely massive. And I don't know why we have to feel like we have to wait until we are in our 60s and beyond to be the people. Look, I know while I'm saying this, knowing that I don't always step into it, but I remember saying to myself, probably around 30, I was like, I ain't waiting until I'm 60 to not care. Because I think that's crazy. And to be able to say that as a younger person, I don't think that it should be seen as a wrong thing for us to say that we don't care what other people think, because us not caring what other people think does not mean that we don't care about you. It simply means that I'm willing to take care of myself so that I can take care of you. Because if I don't take care of myself, then there's absolutely no way that I can be here long enough to help you. So, with that, Jennifer, and then I see Corrine said here, it's not selfish to take care of yourself. You're right. It's not selfish to take care of yourself. Jennifer, what is it that you would like to add as your final piece of advice for the women watching today?
Well, I just love this conversation so much. It's so necessary. And I love the intertwining of what I'm talking about as far as health and what Jen's working on as far as, the professional women. And it just all fits together, right? It's basically the same conversation in two different settings. But my piece of advice is to really if we can step away from wanting it to always be easy, because easy isn't always the way that we're going to get to where we want to go, but that doesn't mean that it's not worth it. So when it comes to making a nutrition change, for example, if you can think about a child learning to tie their shoes, we don't expect them to do it right away. We don't expect them to do it without practice. We don't expect them to just miraculously be able to do it and put their shoes on, get dressed, and head out the door. We expect that of ourselves. We expect we learn something one time, we practice something one time, and we should be proficient at it. We're not. And we are human, just like that 2-year-old. So if we want to embrace our 2-year-old self and give ourselves that grace and that space to be able to learn, how do I feed my body better? How do I move my body better? And that takes time, and it takes consistency, and it's not easy, but it's definitely worth it in the long run.
Yes, easy isn't always the way. Look, you've heard me say it before that I like things to be easy, but that doesn't mean that the work doesn't get done. And things that are hard doesn't mean, as Jennifer just said, doesn't mean that it's something that we shouldn't do and can't do. It simply means that it's new. And if you've never heard me say that before, that's been my mantra for this whole year. It's not hard, it's just different. And we just have to learn how to do the hard things, the different things, right? As Jennifer said, we're not going to just pick it up in one go. As much as I would love to tell people that they can pick it up, I have no magic wand. And I'm sure that the people that you've worked with, as well as the people that I've worked with, believe that we hold wizard hats and degrees from somewhere because it feels like we're making magic happen. But the magic is not happening simply because you are with us. It's happening because you are willing to do the work. You're willing to do the work and take that one step at a time. Ladies, thank you so much for being here today. And I love how in line, as you all didn't see that Jen had commented that you all are twinsies. So, which is true. It's so true. I love it. I love how these conversations really wind together and make such an incredible impact with the people that get to come and watch us, whether they're watching live or in the replay. I hope that you have really picked up what we've been putting down in this episode today, because it's good stuff. And if you need to go back and rewatch, because there was some good stuff in here. I'm gonna go back and rewatch because there was some good stuff in here. Talking about our careers, our health, our overall well-being, really being willing to do the work that is required to be the woman that you are. And I know, guys, I've talked to you before, but today we're talking to the women, okay? So I hope that you're leaving with some fresh perspectives and, more importantly, some tangible steps that you can take to start rewriting your own story. Remember, it's not about making drastic changes overnight. Sometimes it's the smallest shifts that lead to the biggest transformations. And whether you are looking to streamline your business or ignite your next project, I hope that you are walking away with some actionable steps and really understanding that it is easier than you think to make those transformations. And speaking of transformations, that's exactly what I do at Beyond Virtual Events. It's not about just hosting events. It really is about crafting engaging, transformational experiences with purpose. Because an event really is a stepping stone. And when it's done right, it can transform a single moment into a cascade of marketing opportunities for your business. So if you're ready to elevate your virtual presence and turn your next event into a powerhouse of ongoing lead generating engagement without tech headaches, doesn't mean that might not be a little bit hard, but I'm here to make it happen. And if you want to see how you can see this in action, then remember that you can join me here on the first and third Wednesday of every month, where I produce this unconventional virtual event designed to inspire and engage. So until next time, the smallest shift can lead to our biggest breakthrough. Remember, everything that you do can go far beyond. I'll see you next time.